The term cloud computing is everywhere, but what does it mean? It's simply the delivery of on demand computing services from applications to storage and processing power via the internet with pay as you go pricing. The cloud is just a metaphor for the internet. One benefit of using cloud computing services is that firms can avoid the upfront cost and complexity of owning and maintaining their own IT infrastructure and instead simply pay for what they use when they use it. In turn, providers of cloud computing services can benefit from significant economies of scale by delivering the same services to a wide range of customers. Our guest on the show, Oyaje Idoko, a cloud service provider, explains why we need a strong cloud industry.
Cloud computing offers a lot of advantages for customers and businesses of all kinds. One, it allows them quick access to computer resources that ordinarily they may not have been able to afford. And secondly, it takes the burden of managing, computer infrastructure and data centers off businesses and allows that to sit, with the cloud service providers, and gives them, available options of different computer environments and different locations to host their data and access their data in real time.
Can you give us an overview of the cloud market in Nigeria today?
The Nigerian cloud market is growing. Prior to the past maybe 3 years, we had issues with data center availability and even cloud service providers. But with the proliferation of data centers in Nigeria within the past 3 to 5 years, we have seen an upsurge and uptake of cloud services within the country. It's still not where we want it to be. However, the confidence in cloud service providers is growing on a daily basis. First of all, I've seen a correlation between the growth in the startup scene, in the technology startup scene, as well as cloud service adoption. But it's still far from where we want it to be relative to the western part of the world. So a whole lot more needs to be done, both by the government as well as organizations and companies, to make the adoption a lot faster.
Let's talk about those things that need to be done both by the government and by the private sector. What would you advise?
Well, from the part of the businesses, they need to, build more confidence in the system. I know the complaints in the past used to be, issues of security, issues of even the strength of the data centers, issues of power and all that. But I can confidently say that most of those issues that used to be prevalent in the past, are really no more. Right now we have certified, data centers that can be compared to anywhere in the world. Currently we have a lot of businesses and even the government agencies themselves still hosting their data outside the shores of the country, and this really is not acceptable. And the government really needs to drive this through policies. I'm aware NIDA is doing quite a lot in this space, but we need to see a lot more urgency.
What is the benefit to the country if your suggestions are implemented?
One of the first benefits I think the country will derive from this is in the area of data sovereignty. There's no reason why a country like Nigeria should have, their critical data hosted, outside the shores of this country. Of course, we have issues like, security to deal with. Why would you have your critical data in the hands of other countries? A lot of these people that even host their data outside the country don't even know where the data is residing. All they know is that it's sitting in a cloud service provider somewhere without knowing where and what happens to this data, right? So that's one. Then, of course, we have the economic value, especially in terms of foreign exchange, right? Why should we have all? I'm sure if we're to do a research and put a value on how much is being spent on cloud hosting in foreign data centers, it will shock you how much the country is losing. These are all funds that if they come back or stay within the country can do a lot of, bring a lot of value to the country. All right, and of course I mentioned security already. And this applies not just to government agencies, but even the private sector as well, because a lot of critical, public data, citizens' data is in the hands of private enterprises. The banks, for instance, and all the financial data, we have no idea where this data is residing. And this applies not just to Nigerian entities, but even foreign, for instance, foreign credit card companies that are, that have access to Nigerian data. Where is this data residing? Ideally, all this data should be resident within the country. So yes, the government needs to do a lot, and they need to see this as a critical issue that requires very urgent attention.
We mention local content all the time, but what do you think is the relationship between local content and the healthy local cloud services industry?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. Like I mentioned, there are quite a lot of local cloud service providers currently, in the country, right? And it helps, right? It helps for Nigeria to promote their own, because that's the only way we can grow to be competitive, with similar companies from the rest of the world. So if we don't appreciate our own providers, if we don't appreciate our own developers, who will? Given priority to local content service providers and content developers definitely builds their confidence, as well as allows them also to be, to compete with their peers globally.
For emphasis, I'd like you to also talk about the risks. What are some of the risks associated with Nigeria if we do nothing about where our data is stored?
Yeah, well, Nigeria needs to take this very, very seriously. Other countries have done this, and they are still doing this, right? Because we cannot leave our data. Everybody has been talking about data being the new oil. We all know how critical, how sensitive data is. The power really of every nation is the amount of data it has and how well it has put this data to use, right? So we can't leave this data residing in outside the shores of this country. We need to make a very, very deliberate effort, especially as the cloud adoption increases on a daily basis. More and more, organizations, companies, and even the government, is now looking to cloud, and practically every organization, as part of their digital transformation, are looking to cloud within the next, 2 to 5 years. Right, so where is your data going to be resident? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. This data needs to be resident in the country. We have the capacity. We have built, data centers, tier 3, tier 4 data centers, that are comparable to any in the world. So the capacity is there, right? So right now, what we need to do, and do very, very fast, is for government to, come out with a policy that will basically mandate organizations, be it MDAs or private sector, to host their data locally.
I have been chatting with Oyaje Idoko, CEO Layer 3. It is imperative that we develop a formidable local cloud industry. So for example, Zoom is being used for a lot of video calls today, including teaching of our young students. Now guess what? This simply means that the company has a lot of data about us, and irrespective of who uses the service, it is completely outside our jurisdiction. Now, have we stopped to wonder what all of this means for our digital sovereignty? Forward-looking nations have built and continue to build enough capacity so that sensitive and important data can be hosted locally. The wise thing to do is come up with policies that will support our local cloud providers while keeping our data and traffic local. That's our show for today. Remember, we live on social media at Tech Trends TV. You can watch these and previous editions of the show on the Channels TV YouTube account or via cfablog.ng. For Tech Trends, I'm Chukwemeka Agbata.